Well, good morning, and welcome to this First Steps session on designing brilliant virtual classroom events. I'm Matt Borg. I'm on the senior leadership team of Actian and Breeio, and we've been working in learning and development for nearly 40 years. And so we've seen a lot of change during that time. You know, the internet come on and become a real asset for communication and for learning and development. But I'm I'm struggling to think of a time when things have changed more rapidly than they have within the last few months for learning and development professionals. I think we've seen a massive and a very rapid shift as we've all tried to up our skills and find new tools that will allow us to adapt in this time. And so, in our last session, we focused on some of the fundamentals of delivering virtual sessions, and Joe helped us with that. And following that session, we asked what people wanted to learn next. The overwhelming response was we want to do more digging into how to design good sessions. How do we plan for this? How do we prepare? How do we think of what interactions will be useful for our group? And so we've asked Joe from Lightbulb Moment to share her insight and expertise with us this morning. Now, Joe is not a newcomer to the virtual learning world. She's delivered more than 1,000 hours of online learning events, worked in across all different platforms, different countries, worked with hundreds of guest speakers. And so she's the ideal person to help us take some additional first steps in this direction. Now, one thing before I hand over to Joe is we hope that the content that we're going to go through and the interaction that you have with each other will be extremely beneficial, and you'll take away some things that you can use. But I'd also encourage you just to learn by watching. And I think just by experiencing the way that Joe, someone with a lot of experience, runs a session like this, the way that she engages with us in the audience, will be something that's really, really helpful. So Joe, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Well, thank you. A lovely introduction, Matt. That's absolutely delightful. I didn't know what Matt's introduction was going to be. That wasn't scripted from my point of view. So that's really lovely. Thank you. And there's one more person on the team. I mentioned him earlier on. It's your producer, Mike. He works with me at Lightbulb Moment. He's a business operations manager. We've got the same last name because we're siblings and we run the company together. So he's your first stop in chat if you have any kind of problems. So like all online sessions, we have to make sure you've got the tools that you can use to get involved. So first of all, please wiggle your mouse on that screen. And what you can do then is click on the participants icon at the bottom of the screen. What that will do is load up your participant panel. You can move that around on the screen if you want to. And you can use the green tick or the red X if you want to, and that will be a great way for saying yes or no. So please go and try that out now. Go and click a tick or a cross. It's entirely up to you. Click a tick or a cross, entirely up to you. Let's go and see how many of you click. Oh, we got lots of green ticks coming through. Go on, somebody click a few no's. That would be fun. Somebody click a few no's. Excellent. There we go. So it's really lovely to see all of you clicking on those, and we'll use those as we go throughout the session to get some quick feedback from you. So thank you very much for that. Also, what we've got today is what we are focusing on. We're going to talk about the different types of live online sessions, although we're focusing obviously on virtual classrooms. We're going to look a little bit about activity design, how we can see people live online, and also the kind of documentation and structure that's going to help you out. Let's use that green tick again right now. If you're thinking, yep, this is looking good, Joe, this is what I signed up for, then click that green tick, please. You've also got the chat window. We'll talk about it in a second. If you want to make sure that there's something we cover today, you can always go and type it in that chat window and just let me know. Lots and lots of green ticks from you there. Thank you so much for all of those. So also what we have then is our chat window. Again, please wiggle your mouse on the screen, go and click on that speech bubble icon. And what that will do is open up the chat window for you. Now you should have it set to everyone, please. And that means Matt will see it. That means Mike will see it as well as me and everyone else. And I really encourage you to use that chat to ask questions, to share ideas, failures, successes, links to blogs that you've read or something like that. So please do keep using that chat window throughout the whole thing. I love a really good chat window, so we can use that for everyone. So thank you very much for that. And I'm going to move into our very first topic, which is all about the types of sessions we can run live online. And there are 3 different types of live online session. There are webinars, virtual classrooms, and the middle ground, which is a session with a few more people, which we've kind of come up with the most ingenious name of large virtual classroom. Now, webinars, when they aren't done very well, they can just be salespeople talking at you, or like really bad lectures. Now, they can have hundreds of people or as few as 30. We've got well over 100 of you here today. So Andrew says in chat, do you think having people using chat during training is a distraction and stops them listening? It's a bit like people talking whilst you're delivering your workshop. Interesting point, Andrew. I think generally it's not the main issue. It's not a big distraction, because if you've got a question like now, you want to know the answer. And I want to know your questions and get your feedback. It can be distracting if you don't handle it very well, and that's kind of the difference. But I think having that interaction is really important. Now, with virtual classrooms or the virtual instructor-led training or various other names that you can use, of course, what it should do is take all of the best parts of a face-to-face session or workshop and put them live online. At Lightbulb Moment, for our virtual classroom sessions, we limit those to just 10 people. So then there's a lot of focus on individuals as well as that group as a whole. And we could really get to know people and tailor the learning for them. In the middle, though, we have anything from 11 to kind of 30 people. It's what we call that large virtual classroom. There's still more personal connection than there is in a webinar. There's over 100 of you today. I can't possibly get to know and tailor to 100 of you. But with 30 people, I could do a little bit more of that. Now, today we are definitely running a webinar. We are in webinar territory. So by the nature of you not being on audio and the number of you, we're not going to have as rich a discussion as we might with just 10 of you. But I hope that you'll see it can still be really interactive and engaging and a great learning experience. That's certainly my aim. So let's go to that chat window. If you haven't got it switched on, wiggle your mouse, click that speech bubble at the bottom of the screen, please. And what I'd like to know from you, please, is what type of session are you delivering and how long are they? So I've got my categories up there on the screen for you. What kind of sessions are you delivering? Mostly, you might do a variety of things, but what are you delivering mostly? And how long are those sessions? Are they half an hour, 2 hours, all day? What are you doing? Nicola, you've said theatre show. Are you delivering theatre shows virtually? Is that what it is? Lorraine's doing webinars, half an hour to an hour. We've got 30 to 90 minutes from someone. Helen says virtual classrooms up to 2 hours. Lots of you doing virtual classrooms. Some of you a bit more broadcast. Oh, classroom sessions, 5 hours, Terry. Wow. If they're redesigned and delivered really well, of course you can do 5 hours, but it has to be done really well. Up to 10 people, 4 to 5 hours, says Emma as well. Interactive webinars of half an hour, webinars at 2 hours, mostly large virtual classrooms, 60 to 90 hours. 60 to 90 hours, that would be far too much. 60 to 90 minutes. Loads and loads that you're sharing in the chat there. And hopefully what you're seeing in the live session is there are so many people doing a variety of different things, and that actually you're probably doing similar to someone else as well, which is really important. So the main thing I want to take away from just this section that we've got here is that none of these are right or wrong. The whole point is about focusing on how we design and deliver for the number of people that we have and the specific changes we want from people after a session. That's the whole point of a learning intervention. Now let's come back to Matt. Matt, let's get you on webcam, let's get you on audio, because what I'd like to know is a little bit more about how Action approached this design part, please.
Yes, I think the important thing is to not treat this as something completely different. I mean, we stick to the fundamentals of good instructional design. And so where we always start is, what's the difference that we're aiming to make with this intervention? What kind of attitude or action or behavior change are we trying to see? That might also point to what metrics should change as a result of the training or of the session that we're designing, which then I think unlocks our thinking when we start to design. So then we're thinking, okay, what methods are going to be useful here to bring about that change in attitude, action, or behavior? Now, were those in the classroom before? And how can we port those over to the virtual classroom? So some of those will port easily. Some, we're finding some things are more possible in the virtual, or at least, it just work a bit more smoothly, I guess, when we're gathered like this. Things like screen sharing and things like running quizzes or putting a whiteboard up and having everyone contribute to a whiteboard. Some of those things we don't always have at our disposal when we're gathered physically, we're able to do online. So focusing on aim, then starting to think about design, and then critically thinking this isn't probably the only thing I'm going to do to bring about that change. So how am I blending this with other things? Maybe this session is a part of a campaign. I was thinking this morning, I mean, Coca-Cola doesn't run a 30-minute advert and then hope that everybody goes out and buys Coke. No, they have a campaign to change our behavior. And that's the way we need to think as learning people. We might have a 30-minute session, but then what are the other things we're going to blend with that to really reach our objectives and change those metrics?
That's brilliant. I love that. And just that whole kind of 3-step process as an overview just makes me think about kind of those different parts of it and how I'm going to do that with my virtual stuff as part of what everything else is going on. Thank you, Matt. And I think this kind of brings me into focusing then on, well, how do we look at that design part, that activity design? And what we are looking at is we need to ask ourselves questions. And as we've discussed, it's things like, well, how many people are going to be in the session and how long for? But also, well, what content have I got to cover? How difficult is that content and those concepts that we've got? How much discussion is there? What's practical and needs to be hands-on? And those last 2 points, the difficulty and what we're covering and how, well, that's really where our design expertise come in. But it's also where we can start to feel quite challenged. Because designing live online sessions, the delivery method is quite different from what we may have experience of. So let's have a look at our annotation tools so that we can move into our next activity. So if you're on a PC, please move your mouse on top of the screen and you'll see at the top in green, it says you are viewing Joe Cook's screen. And from there, I'd like you to click on View Options. And from View Options, click on Annotate. Now, if you're on a tablet or a phone, it will be a little bit different. Once you've got your Annotate on, what you can then do is experiment with the tools. We're using the draw tools today. So please go and click your draw tool, select one of those, whether it's a line or an arrow, it's entirely up to you. So please go and practice with those tools. Look at that, lots of different tools. We're specifically using the line tools. So under draw, you've got lines or arrows. They're the ones that we're going to use on our next activity. So let's pause. We need to go and make sure that we can actually do our activity. So let's pause, please. We've had a practice there. Let's pause. I know you're all having fun, but let's pause on that. Thank you. So here we've got on the left some things that we might do face-to-face normally, some activities. And on the right, some things that we might do in our webinar or virtual classroom. Please use your arrow tool to draw the lines between them to link to how you would do that. So if you want somebody to speak to the person next to you, somebody's suggesting I'd use private chat. So Hazel, you've got an arrow tool there. That's slightly different. You look at the draw tools, and then what you can do is use a drawing line instead. So let's get your thoughts. There's kind of how we approach this and what we think, but there's actually no right and wrong here. Different options you can use in different ways. Look at all of those colourful lines coming in. Fantastic. So a lot of you are thinking very similarly here, which is really important. And I'm seeing lots of colourful lines come up, which is lovely. And if it's not working, you can always comment in the chat window if you prefer. Okay, everybody, that's fantastic. Thank you. I really like all the answers that you've got on this. And let me just share kind of our kind of way of thinking about this. I've got some really thick black lines, pretty much what you are thinking here at this point. So we're in agreement with what's going on. And what we're looking at here is that if you want to speak to the person next to you, then you could use private chat. That's an option. So let me just clear all those drawings out of the way, just so we've got a nice clean slide to look at. If you would normally use a flip chart, you've got the whiteboard like we've just done. If you want to use small group work, well, there are breakout rooms, but also you can use whiteboard chat and audio. Somebody highlighted that. The point is, when we're designing for live online learning, I always advise people start with that outcome, like Matt said. Focus then on the activity that you want people to do in order to learn and practice that. And then what's the live online equivalent? What is it that we can do? In the chat, please tell me, what are you learning or understanding from this activity? So what are you learning or understanding from this activity? So what are you learning or understanding from this activity? Louise, Adobe Connect definitely 100% has breakout rooms, and they are awesome because you can plan them ahead of time and put things in them like whiteboards and stuff like that. So they're absolutely awesome. So what are we learning from this? In the chat window, there are no barriers. You can use a specific tool for a specific purpose. There's always a solution. It engages everyone. You can have a high level of variety. Online can be as varied as the classroom. How to be interactive in a large group. You need to practice it, absolutely. Face-to-face can be fully replaced with online functions. That there's a lot of tools available and there's more options and so on. What fantastic results from you. Thank you so much. And I'm loving that you're picking up on those things. We're going to use another tool now. So have a look at your annotation toolbox. And what we're using at this point is the text tool. So please click on the T text tool, click on the slide and type your name, and then click one more time to reveal it. So click on the T text tool, click on the whiteboard, type your name, and then click one more time to reveal it. Now, if your annotation toolbars are not working, do not worry. You can use the chat window for our next activity. It's no problem at all. So click on the T text tool, click on the whiteboard, and then just type your name and click one more time. Okay, this is looking fantastic. Wow, Simon, you've gone big and bold with that. That's fantastic. So let's just pause there a second. Let's just pause there. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the question that I've got for you. And this is really about all of the different types of activities that we have. So when we're running face-to-face, we use flip charts, we do brainstorms, we'd have discussions and so much more. Why do we use these in learning? So on the whiteboard, please, or you can type in chat if you prefer, if that's not working, or it's a bit too messy, you can do that. So when we're thinking face-to-face, we use flip charts, brainstorms, discussions, so many more activities. Why do we even do that in learning? What's the point of doing that in learning? So you can write in chat or you can write on the whiteboard. And David, you've mentioned poll everywhere, which can create a word cloud. That's a really good one. You can use some of those face-to-face and live online as well, obviously. There's going to be so much on this whiteboard. Let me see if I can move some of these things around. Definitely engagement, focus, interaction and engagement, diverse points of view, interaction, peer learning, to build connections. It's visual, to connect, to create engagement and get acknowledgement that the matter is being passed on, variety, and you engage people cognitively. You get people to think about the topic. You make the learning explicit. What else have we got? It facilitates memorization. You're absolutely right. I could tell you stuff, but it doesn't mean you're going to remember necessarily. Well, I've got a couple of other things here I wanted to pick up on. Greater perspective, you get different people's point of views. It solidifies learning, fantastic. Speaking trumps listening. Thank you. To refer to later. And what have we got in the chat? Assessing learning, sharing knowledge, reinforcing things, gauging understanding of the learners. What else have we got? Including everyone and so on. Fantastic. Absolutely loving all of your answers here. So thank you very much, everybody. And I completely agree with everything that you've got here. What we're doing is we're just making sure that we've got something that's social learning to help people remember. All of these things are kind of really important, and you've highlighted that really nicely. Now, when it comes to designing a live online session, it can be really easy to instantly think, right, I'll use a whiteboard activity here and I'll plan it this way, and engagement done, move on, all okay. I've done that interaction, tick. But we always need to think about the session size, amount of people that we've got, how long it is, and how those things that we choose to do, those activities and the tools that we use, how that impacts the facilitation. So let me show you this, for example. This is the activity we just did. We've got more than 100 of you here today, all contributing to that whiteboard, some of you contributing in chat if you don't have the tools available to you. Now, this is the design of slide I use in a virtual classroom. So I would ask that same question, but here, what we've got are rows in a table. So somebody would type their name in, and they would just go and type something along that row for their name. Now, this is really good because what it does is it makes it a little bit tidier. It gives everybody their own space. And yes, Helen, I call it swim lanes. That's what we do. It's just a table in PowerPoint that we put the annotation tools on top of. It's neat, it's tidy, it gives a subtle pressure that everybody has to get involved, but it's really important. Laura, these functions are available in the free session or the free version of Zoom. What you have to do though is go and switch them on. So make sure you log into the website, go to your profile and make sure you switch on annotation, switch on breakouts, and that will solve that for you. So the point here is that I have two versions of this activity depending on how many people I've got. So what are the differences that you're seeing in how I might facilitate this? So in chat, please, what are the differences between the first version with over 100 of you and the second version with 10 of you? How might I facilitate that differently? Sharon says, will this work in other platforms? Sharon, I think Teams works with PowerPoint. I'm pretty certain it does. It's got a whiteboard effect, but there are other tools that you can go and use as well. I know that some people say that the whiteboard tools in Teams is a little bit clunky. So at the end of this section, I'll just share some other tools that might be useful. It's not exactly the same as this, but it might be useful for you. So what else have we got in chat? How might I facilitate this differently when we are looking at maybe just kind of 10 people? Well, what we've got is you could explain the usage differently. It can be more structured. You can use personal call out. So I could say, hey, Bob, you've written something great. Please let us know a little bit more, and so on. So I think you've got some great things there about kind of how we would use that. And here's that list of other things that we might go and use at that point. So you can use those different types of tools depending on how your organization works. And you're right, Emma, we could use it for feedback from a breakout. That would be great too. What we're looking at here is we've got kind of some things here about face-to-face and converting, and lots of us are in that place at the moment. So giving me a green tick if you're thinking, yeah, I've had to either take my materials and put them online, probably due to COVID-19, or we're going to be doing that in the future. So we've actually had to kind of take something and convert it to live online, or we're going to be doing that in the future. So quite a few of you are doing that. And we need to kind of think about this, because I'm saying we cannot just use our face-to-face sessions without updating them. And so why do you think that is? There's quite a few of you doing that, and Ali saying we've had to completely review everything. Why can't we just take what we do face-to-face and put it live online without updating? Why can't we do that? Why doesn't that work? It takes too long asking for people to stare at a screen. You need to adapt to encourage greater encouragement. There are so many alternative distractions. They're too long. You can't handle bones online. You definitely can't do that, David. You can view things, but you can't handle them. Attention spans are shorter. The time and content was written for face-to-face. We need to shorten the sessions, the technology, difficulties. Yeah, there can be challenges. I'm not going to lie about that. We can't read the energy as easily. It's very different reading the energy online. That's to do with digital body language. We're not really covering that today, but what Mike will do is go and put a link in chat about that, so you can read up a bit more if you want to. We're not sure who's paying attention. We've got different ways that we like to approach our learning. So there's all sorts of different things and reasons why we can't do this. If people don't appreciate the stuff that we've been discussing, what they tend to do is they end up compressing their content and presenting it at people. Whereas the approach that we're advocating is to chunk material into a number of options, including blending materials and live sessions together. Emma says it's more stressful as you are on all the time. With a flip chart in a classroom, you can have a break from delivery. I think that's a good point there, Emma. Thank you. Now, there are lots of reasons why this won't work, frankly. We can't just put our face-to-face materials online. Everything you've said is absolutely valid, because some of the materials and activities, they just won't work the same in a live online platform. And we need to design for the technology we have, whether it's Zoom or Teams or Adobe Connect. And I've got experience across the board, and they're different. So sometimes we have to change those even between platforms. You need to plan your interactions differently from not being able to see your attendees. And we're going to talk about that very briefly in a moment. And also, quite frankly, the technology gives you options you might not have had face-to-face. And I think that's something that actually people overlook sometimes. So, Matt, I think this is probably a good time for us to discuss this, because actually the way that you do this kind of at Action and Breeio is very much about the blend. And that's something I love about the work that you do.
Yes, I mean, that's something that's built right into the heart of Breeio is chunking up and blending things together. So whether it's chunking up a virtual session into many different sessions, or blending that with an assessment, or maybe a kind of asynchronous piece of e-learning, post-survey, all these different things that you could, maybe it's even a physical thing that needs to be done in the workplace. All of those things can be blended together. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And then the second thing would be that what the point I made earlier about it, not seeing it as a kind of silver bullet that can change things in one hit. It's something that's probably part of a campaign to make change.
Yeah, and that campaign thing, that it's kind of like a marketing term that we're borrowing in L&D.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have a lot to learn from our marketing colleagues in the way that these are people who are paid to change behavior. That's
Yeah.
that's very much the way that they see their role. And so what are the sorts of tactics that they might use? Well, they would certainly drip a communication message over time,
Mm.
and something that we might call a campaign. And they would use different methods in different places to get the message across.
Yeah. And I like this third point you've got here about learn and improve. I mean, that's what our whole industry is about. But what are you specifically thinking about here?
I think particularly right now, as we've made this big shift into what for many people is a new space, and is requiring new skills and new tools and getting to grips with different things, is just to give yourself the opportunity to learn and to improve, and try something, learn from it, and keep improving. Be kind to yourself in this stage where we're really learning new things, and know that the improvement will come.
And even with, like you said at the beginning, over 1,000 hours, or was it 1,000 hours? I can't remember what I'd worked out that I'd done. I'm still experimenting, which is half the fun, still learning, still hopefully improving. Now, Matt, I mentioned just now that live online can give you things different that you might not have had before. And one of the things that about this is, I think you've got an example for us now about it, haven't you?
Yeah. So one of the things that we try to do at Breeio is to give learning and development professionals the tools and advice that they need to make an impact. And we understand that right now, when everybody's making this shift, there are tools all over the place that can be very confusing. So what we've done is we've built support for live online learning straight into Breeio. And one of the things that we're looking at here is the ability, if I wanted to, if we wanted to share with this group a resource, maybe an assessment or a survey, I, as the trainer or the facilitator, would have access to those links. I can then paste those into chat. So in Zoom, we would paste that link into chat, and each person would be able to click on that, just like we interacted with the whiteboard and we used the annotation tool. But this time, instead, I'm clicking on a link, and it doesn't take me away from Zoom or WebEx or wherever I am, but it will bring up that asset from Breeio and let me interact with it. And it's talking back to Breeio, so it's recording those answers. And so you, as the facilitator, can then see the answers that the group has given, and you're able to then adjust your session accordingly. So if you gave an assessment, that's all tracked. It can help people make progress, but it also helps you as the facilitator to adapt to the level of knowledge for the cohort.
Fantastic, thank you. And quite frankly, it looks better than any polling I've seen in any of the tools that I've been using. And Helen says, great for flexibility. Yes, it is. And great for tracking as well. That's something that's really nice about Breeio as an LMS, how it integrates with Zoom and other tools, and for that tracking piece. So thank you for sharing that, Matt. I love that functionality. And this brings us into that point about how can we have that flexibility, as Helen's mentioning. And we need to focus on building these learning experiences, even though we are remote from people and we might not be able to see them. So what worries you about not seeing your attendees? Let's use that chat window again, please. What worries you about not being able to see your attendees? So please share something in chat. So we're talking about our virtual classrooms, maybe a large virtual classroom. What worries you about not seeing people? Yeah, are they paying attention? We can't assess their engagement. They ain't listening. Yeah, are they zoning out? Are they doing other things? Are they yawning? You can't tell their level of interest. You're not hearing them like a radio DJ. We can't read their body language. Are they listening? Are they learning? We can't hold their attention. Are we talking to ourselves? We can't see their facial expressions. Do they understand? What are they doing? Have they understood? Stuart says, I'm going to go and make a cup of coffee. and Elspeth, what a great point. It's hard to speak into the void. Like, I'm talking at a webcam right now. And it can feel like there's no energy from the room. Hopefully what you're seeing, even just from like on a webinar with over 100 of you, that actually just by reading out some of these answers, I'm getting that energy, I'm getting that feedback. And David is saying not seeing if the content is being taken in. And I think not being able to see that, we as trainers and facilitators, we are experts in reading a room. And Angie is also saying reactions are moderated. So, you know, we need to design around not seeing people. If you have attendee webcams on, you know, Zoom is really good for that. Teams is building that really and improving that as well. That's a huge bonus. And yeah, we can't hear them nod. It's a great point. And that's why things like the green ticks and stuff are a really good, useful resource. Because we need to design with a variety of the tools in whatever our chosen platform is, from the simplest closed question of yes, no, tick, cross, we can build up on things like chat and activities that you design with whatever your platform is, and an external app that we mentioned earlier on, like Menti or Jamboard or Breeio. You can include group work in breakouts, and of course getting people chatting on audio, and so much more. Beyond building learning activities and experiences, this is also about engagement. So here we've got a slide. It's just showing the participant panel in Zoom. And what it's showing me at the bottom left-hand corner here is how many people have clicked that green tick. So this is just an example with one attendee. But with hundreds of you, I was seeing that going up 30, 40, 50 green ticks today. And that's just a really quick way of me being able to see what's the kind of participant engagement. Who's with me? It's really useful on larger sessions, as it gives that indication of like who's still physically at the computer and doing things. Daniela says, I can't see the green tick. It's on the participant panel, Daniela. So Mike will help you to open that if you can't see it. Now, this is a great point about the delivery skills you already have and their application into the virtual classroom. And I can see some green ticks and hands up already. Thank you very much. Now, let's say 6 out of our 8 virtual classroom delegates have actually ticked either a green tick or a red X. How could we handle the other 2 that haven't clicked? So in the chat, please, we've got 6 out of our 8 virtual classroom delegates have clicked either the tick or the cross, like some of you are doing now. How could we handle the 2 that haven't clicked? Just drop some ideas in chat, please. How could we handle the other 2 that haven't clicked? So we could address them by name, ask them directly, call them out, ask for their thoughts, use their names for encouragement, engage them. Say, I'm still waiting for all responses. That's a good one, Louise. Directly ask, or I'll give you another so many seconds to get your response in. Thank you, Lorraine. Ask if they know how to do it, says Emma. That's a good one. Because if they've missed that bit at the beginning of open up the participant panel like we did in Zoom today, they're not going to know that. That's a really important point. Do they need more clarity? Absolutely love those things that you're saying. There will be some things that are more or less appropriate, depending obviously on the design of your session, on the culture of the people and the organization, your own style and more. The point is, though, we have options, both in the software and the skills that we already have. So yeah, have we been clear as a facilitator? So Laura says, I wouldn't call them out, but I would encourage all participants to vote now. So this could just be, hey, Bob and Alice, you know, maybe I haven't explained that tool properly, or maybe you're thinking differently and you want to type on the keyboard, or maybe you want to click the hand up and ask a question. So you're giving them different options. And Alexis, you're right. What if they said yes in chat? And we get that a lot, that sometimes I'm saying green tick if you're all happy about whatever, and somebody's typed yes in chat. So we do need to look out for those things as well, Alexis. Great point. What we are going to do now is we are going to use a different annotation tool. So please go and use your annotation tool, and let's practice the stamp tool, please. Practice the stamp tool. And S. Pittman, you've got a great idea, a video tutorial to view before they join the session, so they know, click this and this window will open. That's really good. Good idea. So let's go and practice with this stamp tool, please. And again, if it's not working for you, do not worry. It's not a big problem. Okay, we've got this working. There are loads of stamp tools that are great fun. So let's pause, please. Let's pause, pause. And before we go on to the actual questions. So come on, guys, you've got to pause. You've got to stop before we can move on. So here's my question for you. All of these different things coming up here are different tools that give us opportunities for feedback on people's learning, and as a way that we can start seeing people even though they're not actually in front of us. It's a way to get body language through activities, which is a slightly different way of thinking about things. So what I'd like you to do, please, is use the tick tool on the ones where you're thinking, yeah, you know what, I've actually already used that in sessions I've delivered to get to know people, to get to understand them and see them. I've already used that. And also then please use the heart tool to click on the ones where you're thinking, I might use that in the future. I might look out for that. I might focus on that in the future. And of course, if those aren't working for you, you can just make some quick notes in the chat window if you prefer. So ticks on the ones that you've already used. So you're like, well, I can't see people, but by looking at this and seeing how they do it, I'm making interpretations, because body language, when we look around a room, body language is just an interpretation. That person with their arms crossed, are they sitting back and frowning and not involved? Or are they back and relaxed and just comfortable? So it is an interpretation. So there's lots of green ticks here, which is brilliant to tell me, actually, you know what? I've done some of this in the past, and that's brilliant. And there's lots of hearts as well. And the emoticons and the whiteboard, I think, are getting the most hearts there, because this is about how are we interpreting what happens. And remember that what we're looking at here is a virtual classroom, maybe with 10 people, or a large virtual classroom with 30. And what you might find is that there's always somebody who is the quick one, or there's always somebody who's the last one. And that's not right or wrong, but it's how do we interpret that? What does that mean in getting to know people? So thank you very much with that. Jenny says, how do you use a poll with Zoom? Really easy, Jenny. When you log into the website for Zoom, what you need to do is go to your profile, make sure it's clicked on so that you actually use it. And then when you have a session that you've created in the website, you'll see there's an add poll feature. And what you can do is, if you go to the support site on Zoom and do a search for it, there's the help feature on Zoom is really good. So you can go and use that. Okay, fantastic, everybody. Thank you so much. And hopefully there's a few different ideas here as well that you might think about, kind of how can I actually look at this in the future? And that's on the free version as well. The free version has all the same features as the pro version. You just need to switch them on. Okay, so thank you very much for that. Now, why is it that this feedback is so important? We're talking about the facilitation part, we're talking about the delivery. I know this webinar is about design, but design and delivery, they just go together. We can't untangle them that much. So in the chat window, please, why is it that getting this feedback from people through emoticons, the chat, the whiteboard, through polls that maybe we save in Breeio, through Jamboard post-it note activities or breakouts, whatever we're doing, even as simple as a green tick or a red X, why is that so important? Why is this so important? Let's see what you're putting in chat. To know if it works, have they understood and engaged? Is it being effective? Mike, you've got a question there that I'll let you answer. Ali, you've got a question as well, which I'll come back to. David says it's not for them. It is as much for us. Yeah, it's for both people. It's for the attendees, but also we need to know that as well. It demonstrates they're still with us. It's a break from me talking the whole time. I know what you mean, Louise. Louise says it ensures understanding and it monitors levels of engagement. Yes, it's keeping in touch. We can tailor our instructions. Are we pitching our training at the right level? We keep focused on the learning to keep us involved. It's a communication method. James says to make improvements to future sessions. Love it. I can't tell you the amount of times I've asked a question or done a whiteboard and then gone, that didn't work very well. Let's change that for next time. Joanne says it adds variety to the experience, and that's engaging. Yes. And Sharon says you might need to go over something. Yeah, if everybody's clicking one thing or writing one-word answers when I was expecting a paragraph, there's something that we might need to do. And Ali, you asked, do you think seeing people on video is important for virtual classrooms? There's two ways of thinking about that, Ali. One is it can be really useful to see that they're there, to see their smiling faces, nodding and so on. That's really nice. But for bandwidth reasons, you might not have it on. The platform might not support it very well. People might have very personal reasons not to do that. And so therefore, we have to respect that. So all the things we're looking at here are really important to build in case you don't have webcam. So I think it depends. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Absolutely great feedback there. And going back to these kind of interactions and using these together, we're building learning activities. Every time you do this, you are giving yourself, as a facilitator, teacher or trainer, an opportunity to check in with those individuals and the group as a whole, and start seeing them in a way that isn't just them sitting in front of you or on those tiny webcam screens. And it also, it's so that you can plan, you can assess, you can facilitate effectively, as you've said. David says, how difficult is it to run a session solo? Clearly, Mike has an active role in this session. He does. And I'm very, very grateful for him. And Mike says it's impossible. Wow. On a webinar like we have today, Mike is invaluable. I have run webinars this size, this busy on my own, and I'll tell you it's not easy. And quite frankly, you don't get the same level of experience. But we're talking also today about virtual classrooms with 10 or a large virtual classroom with up to 30 people. You can do it. You need to know your technology really well, have it all planned really well as knowing your topic and your facilitation. And for the first 5 years of Lightbulb Moment, I did that all on my own. For the last 3 years, I've had Mike, and it's so much better. His ego is going to go through the roof at this point. He was off sick a couple of days last week, and I had to run sessions without him. And I thought, I'll be fine. And I was fine, but I did prefer it with him. So maybe buddy up and learn from each other, some things like that. I'll come back to that point in just a second. And Mike's saying he's been helping people in private chat as well. So he's also been doing things behind the scenes. And yes, Angie, start simple, definitely, and practice with your colleagues. Okay, so we need to make sure that we've actually planned this all really well. And I've seen some other questions you've been asking that Michael's been answering as well. And this all leads to really important documentation. Where can you find a mic? Well, you can email me. You can't have my mic, but we do have other mics available. Now this facilitator guide, this is just a screen grab. It's something that I've developed for my live online sessions. I'm using this right now. And what you can do is you can go and download a template of this if you want to. You can go and read a bit more of how I've put it together. What I want to do is talk you briefly through this so that you understand it. First of all, what I've got here is I use slide images to help me see what's coming next. Also, I don't script too much. Mike will be the first one to tell you whatever's in my script, I've gone off it. I've not said necessarily exactly what's there, but what it's doing is it's helping me. More importantly, it's helping Mike if my computer crashes, or it's helping the colleagues that I work with that deliver my training. Do I use two screens? Yes, I do. I do have a giant screen so that I've got two things on screen, and a second screen is always useful if you can, or print something out, or use maybe a tablet device can be good too. Also, what we've got here in angle brackets are actions like click to animate, such as I'm doing right now, and red questions. They help things jump out because they're the bits that I've planned for the learning journey. Now, we've discussed just now about having a mic. I do have a mic. So his column is here, and you can see that there are things pre-planned for him to use. Excuse me. If you don't have a mic, maybe you want to buddy up and learn and support other people. But also, I still separate those things out because it's really important when I'm on my own to separate the topic and facilitation and the technical stuff. What I've got here is just a little bit of information about the platform. So this is my Adobe Connect version because Adobe Connect has layouts, so you can see the layouts that I'm using. If this was WebEx, it would be tabs. With Zoom, it's which PowerPoint deck or screen share am I doing. There's also screen grab, tiny little icons of things like chat or hand up, because I don't want to script out, click on the chat window. I just want it visually. We process things visually much quicker and it helps me. What I've also got is my timing. Yes, some of it's down to the 30 seconds. That's not everybody's style. Again, it helps. Is this a quick run through? Is it a bigger activity? And it's these three columns together that really help us understand, well, actually, these are the things that we're doing in terms of having variety and making sure that what we've got is our timing and our interaction in there. So we've already mentioned that maybe you can buddy up with a producer and think about, working with a colleague or somebody here that you've met today if you can't afford the resources for what you're trying to do with regards to producing. But now that I've shown you this, I'd really like to know, clicked on a bit quick, what elements might help you with your own design and delivery and really designing for interactivity. So what are you thinking? It's a nice example. It's similar to what I use face-to-face, says Ali, which is brilliant. Oh, Trishla, you've started using the template already. Oh my God, that's amazing. Thank you, Trishla. And Emma's saying they're very helpful and it's useful, and using the icon images is good. It's similar to how you plan face-to-face, Andrew, and that's how mine developed actually, was from what I did face-to-face, so similar there. Similar to the old audio visual templates. Thank you, David. Okay, so there's just something that you can go and have a look at. There's one more thing that I wanted to show you. When we're talking about, is it chat, is it whiteboard? How do we know which tool to use? Now, what we have is this flow chart to help you with kind of thinking about things. But also what we wanted to do is make sure that you had a different way that you could focus on this. So what we've done is we've teamed up with Breeio, and Breeio have done an amazing job and put together an interactive version of that flow chart for you to use. You can use it on your phone or on a computer. It's in the resources, and Mike has shared a link with that there for you. So let's summarize and then move into questions. So what questions do you have? Please put them in chat. We talked about the different types of sessions, and we're focusing obviously on virtual classrooms today. We know that there are live online equivalents of what we might do face-to-face, and that we need to not just compress and present at people, but chunk and blend. We talked about integrating tools into your live online sessions, about how to build up even simple interaction into activities and opportunities for us to get feedback. And lastly, the importance of great documentation and that tool for making sure that we're choosing the right thing in our designs. So we've got a few moments for questions before I ask you one last thing today. What questions do we have? Do I have a good guide for the role of the producer? Mike will go and share with you a link to a community site. We've got a community you can join, it's completely free. And we've got a great post on there about the producer role. So that's got some information and links to our podcast and stuff. So Mike will go and find that for you in a moment. And Jenny says, thank you, this has been useful, our pleasure. David says, if dividing to even 30 will need to lead and deliver 5 sessions. Oh, I've misread that entirely, David. Let me try again. Do you mean delivering to 30 people? So David, I'm not sure on the wording of that question. If you can ask that again with different wording, that would be great. Or if you follow that link that Mike shared, you can always go and post that on our community as a question, and we can answer it more fully there. So apologies for not understanding that. Sharon says, please can you send the links in another way? Oh, they're blocked by your firewall. Sharon, you'll get an email from Breeio with the resources in it, so you'll get that by email. David has 170 students, so you can use breakouts, will be really good even with that number of people, David. That would work really well. Alexis says, we're going to bring in Teams for meetings. We're currently using Zoom. Are they comparable? Really good point, Alexis. And Mike is going to also share with you a link that we've got to our Teams discussion on our community. At the moment, Teams, I'd say, is definitely not comparable to Zoom in terms of virtual classrooms. But, and this is a big but, Microsoft are doing a ton of updates. So with the next couple of months, there's more and more stuff coming out. So it wouldn't surprise me if by the end of the year, Teams overtakes Zoom. It really wouldn't surprise me. Zoom does support breakouts. Again, you need to log into the website, go to your profile, switch them on is the key point. Trishla says, I was wondering if we have more control over muting and unmuting in breakouts. Asking because we're planning to use this with 7-year-olds. Interesting, Trishla. So if you're using Zoom and breakouts, they have control over their mute button in breakouts. What I try and do if it's a problem that they're not unmuting is I try and get people to unmute before we go into the breakout, and then when they're inside the breakout, they're automatically unmuted and can start chatting. And that's especially important actually in WebEx, because in WebEx breakouts the unmute button is in a different place from where it is in the normal kind of main session, so that's really important. Okay, is security a worry with Zoom, Heidi? Yes, it is. It's got a lot better. It really has. And again, what Mike will do is go and share a link to some resources we've been gathering on that. It's got a lot better. It's still improving. It depends on which security you're worried about. If it's in the session and that whole Zoom bombing thing that you've heard about, that's got a lot better. And I think I am not worried about that personally anymore when I set up my sessions. If you're worried from a data, GDPR, or that kind of end, which IT tend to be a bit more worried about, I haven't looked into it in detail. I'm not 100% convinced, but that's something to look up a little bit more. Mark, the recording of today's session will go out as an email. What other questions? Louise says, what are the Adobe Connect? Where are they in Adobe Connect? It doesn't depend on the license as far as I know, Louise. You should have that available to you. So Louise, what you need to do in Adobe Connect, you'll have the attendees pod where you've got the list of names. And what you need to do is look at the top of that. There's 3 buttons. And one of those is like an X with bricks on the end. That's the breakouts bit that allows you to say room 1, room 2, who's going in which rooms. The other thing you need to do is look at layouts in Adobe Connect, if you haven't discovered those already, because then you can create the layout, i.e. do I want slides here and attendees here, or where are they? And it's the combination of those 2 that you need. So go and do a Google on layouts and breakouts. Okay, so thank you so much for this. If you've got more questions, you can go to our community and make sure that you are asking questions there. What we've got is a really quick reflection. I'd like you to type in chat, please. What is something you've learned today? A quick word or 2 in chat. What is something that you've learned about today? Andrew, you're saying about saving chat as it shows private messages. It only shows your own private messages. It doesn't show private messages between everyone, from the research that I've done. What is it we've learned? We've learned annotation tools, check engagement, private messages, polling, swim lanes, how to use the tools, variety, storyboard templates, have things to switch on in Zoom, great ideas, nice to know we're on the right track. Designing is key, absolutely lovely. Now we have some resources for you. It's on this link, it's in the chat. We've got that flowchart you can go and have a look at, and all sorts of other things, including some demos of Breeio as well, of course. So thank you so much. There'll be a follow-up with the link to the recording and a follow-up survey with information. On behalf of myself and Mike at Lightbulb Moment, Matt and the Action and Breeio team, thank you so much for your involvement, attention and questions today. You've been brilliant. So thank you very much. Stay safe, enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye bye.